been almost 6 months since the High Republic first kicked off, but honestly, it's felt more like a whole lifetime. The anticipation was so intense, the need to know what happens next so extreme. But now, the wait is over. 2 brand new High Republic books are finally out. Wave 2 of Phase 1 of the High Republic is finally here, and stars, does it feel so good to be back. Hey everyone, my name is Emma Park. I'm a content creator here at Youtini, and today I'll be reviewing The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott. But before we begin, please make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel with notifications on so that you'll be the first to know whenever Youtini goes live or posts a brand new video. With that, let's get started. The Rising Storm was released on June 29th, 2021, and is part of the second wave of Phase 1 of the High Republic Publishing Initiative. It costs the typical adult novel hardcover price of $28.99 US and is 448 pages long. I got my copy on Amazon using a Youtini affiliate link, which will be in the description below. If you're the type of person who prefers audiobooks, we've got you covered there too. You can get your first audiobook through Audible on Youtini by going to audibletrial.com/Youtini. Every Star Wars audiobook has amazing production with music, sound effects, and incredible narration. And if you want to listen to The Rising Storm, our team gave this audiobook great marks. Those are all the basics, now let's move on to the actual review. The review team at Youtini looks at a few key aspects of each book we review: plot, characters, originality, writing, and entertainment. While we aren't paid for these reviews, we do receive advanced reader copies for free. Our goal with these reviews is to be honest yet respectful because we love our Star Wars authors and we want them to keep writing Star Wars books. That being said, you can always trust us here at Youtini to give you an honest review that will make your reader experience the best possible. Alright, let's dive into it. Let's discuss the plot first. It was really easy to assume that this plot would be very similar to its predecessor, but that couldn't be any less true. The main difference is that most of this book takes place in one location, specifically on Velo at the Republic Fair. Similar to its predecessor, though, was how there were multiple storylines woven together to make one larger, cohesive story. And the way it was done was brilliant. There were a couple of Jedi here, a few Republic representatives there, and more Jedi everywhere. Despite these groups being on their own and serving their own purpose, Cavan Scott ties all these storylines together into one amazingly intriguing story. There's a great mix of action and quiet moments that doesn't feel too fast or too slow. With such an epic story, it would be really easy for the story to just run away from the reader, but Scott manages the pacing perfectly. The big centerpiece of the plot, the Republic Fair, was so amazingly perfect in every single way. It's like Walt Disney's Epcot, but on steroids. It's also the perfect place for things to go wrong, if you know what I mean. Despite taking place in mainly the same location, this in no way detracts from the epic vibe of the story. We get to see the Jedi continually be protectors of the light and protectors of the good, and the plot really only adds to that narrative. The plot lines in this book were so intriguing and epic that it's hard to put this book down. The quiet moments were powerful while not taking anything away from the pacing. For these reasons, we gave the plot a 9.1 out of 10. Moving on to characters now, and boy do we have a lot to talk about here. Speaking in general terms first, the Jedi were simply amazing in this book. I couldn't wait to read more about them, and whenever they popped up on the page I got really excited. Because honestly, it was really cool to see how they were navigating in this post-Nihil world. And speaking of the Nihil, they were also very interesting in this book. Seeing the shifts in leadership put the reader on edge, and for good reason too. The Nihil know they have the Republic where they want them, and that's a terribly frightening thing for the Republic as a whole. Moving on to specific characters, let's start with one of the stars of this book, Stellan Gios. We've heard a lot about him, but haven't seen too much of him, but trust me, that changes in a major way in this book. In fact, I might just have to say that Stellan is one of my favorite Jedi after this book, which I honestly didn't expect at all. He represents what a lot of us want a Jedi to be like. Kind, compassionate, powerful, and an embodiment of the light. Because of this, he gets a lot of responsibility in this book, and rightfully so. Now to a character that we know really well by now, Bel-Zettifar. It was intriguing to see how he was dealing with the loss of his master Lodin. Bel also has a great sense of duty in keeping the peace after the attacks by the Nile, which he's seen firsthand. Plus, he's still got his Charhound buddy with him, Ember. Who doesn't love a space dog? Next is Elzar Mann, who we have met before and have gotten to spend a little bit of time with, but we get to know him much more in this book. He reminds me a bit of Anakin Skywalker in his disregard for the rules of the Council, which is a really interesting counter to Stellan Gios. We could seriously spend a few hours on just the characters alone, and it's hard to mention everyone in depth here. So here are a few honorable mentions for some really interesting and awesome characters in this book. Ty Yorick, Chancellor Lena So, Archivist Orbelin, Marcian Rowe, and Lorna D. One criticism that the review team had, though small, was that this book might have benefited from a dramatis personae similar to in the Thrawn Ascendancy books. There were a lot of characters in this book, and sometimes it was hard to keep straight what exactly their role was or what they were doing, but other than that, the characters were masterfully done. The characters were a highlight of this book, and we gave this section a 9.5 out of 10. Next, let's talk about the originality. I didn't think anything could get more original than Light of the Jedi, but boy was I wrong. The Republic Fair might be one of the single most original ideas to come out of this era, and that's saying a lot. Not only was the idea of the fair as a whole original, but the smaller pieces of the fair were original as well. The floating islands showing off a planet and its flora and fauna were such an interesting idea and unique concept that doesn't really have a similar counterpart in the Star Wars universe. Besides the amazingly original idea of the Republic Fair, we also had a unique Jedi the likes of which we've never seen before. A monster hunter Jedi. Like, let's just all let this sink in for a moment. A monster hunter Jedi. Like, is Ty Yorick cool or what? We couldn't talk about the originality without mentioning the High Republic as a whole. We've said it before, and we'll say it again, the High Republic is one of the best ideas to come out of the expanded universe and is chock full of original characters, settings, plot lines, and factions. Simply put, it's refreshingly unique. The originality of this book was simply awe-inspiring, and we gave this section a 9.2 out of 10. Let's move on to writing now. Somehow, Cavan Scott wrote an over 70-chapter novel without making it feel laborious in the least. In fact, these shorter chapters made the book flow really nicely in terms of changes between storylines. Based on the scope of this story alone, this book could have easily been overwhelming to read, but instead it was an absolute page-turner that didn't feel like a burden at all to enjoy. Another great facet of Scott's writing is how he wrote the previously existing characters. While putting his own spin on them, they still felt like the characters we knew and loved from the first wave, even though they were already written by previous authors. I can't imagine that's an easy thing to do, so I walked away respecting that aspect of the book. It's worth noting that this is Cavan's first Star Wars novel outside of an audio drama and comics, and we really respected his command of this format. His writing was absolutely masterful, and I know I speak for everyone on the team when I say that we need more Star Wars books from Cavan ASAP. The review team was extremely impressed with the writing, and we gave this section a 9.5 out of 10. Last up is entertainment. If I had just one word to describe this book, it would be gripping. It's truly the epitome of an entertaining page-turner. And because we have absolutely no clue what happens in this era, it's especially intense because we all just need to know what happens next. Although it started out on the slower side with politics and other machinations, that didn't hinder our outlook on the overall entertainment value. The slower start helped to set up the drama and intensity of the rest of the book, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. A great measuring stick for how entertaining a book is if you stay up way too late at night to finish it, which happened to multiple people on our review team, and honestly, that says more about the entertainment value than I could personally tell you. The entertainment of this book soared and was really one of the highlights, and we gave this section a 9.8 out of 10. Overall, this book was a pure masterclass in how to develop multiple plot points with a varying cast of characters. We're all so excited to have the High Republic back, especially when it kicks off with a book of this caliber. We gave The Rising Storm an official Youtini score of a 9.4 out of 10. That'll do it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed our review of The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott. But we want to know what you think about this book. Comment down below and let us know. Our Discord server has amazing conversations on all of the new material, so I highly recommend you join at youtini.com/discord. If you'd like to help support Youtini, links to all of the High Republic books are in the description below. If you want to take a deeper dive into the books, check out the Living Force podcast, or catch the live show every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Youtini. Visit us online at youtini.com for timelines, reading guides, and book profiles on every single story in the Star Wars galaxy. Lastly, if you'd like to help support Youtini more directly, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Youtini. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.